Hello and welcome to my guide to all of the Mount Rokkon bosses. If you're looking for Yozakura, make sure to check out the other video dedicated just to her and all her variations. If you need help on those second bosses though, let's get started. Starting with the left portal, the second boss here is Moko the Restless. He's this cool samurai guy. He does have extra skills depending on which route you're taking, but let's go over his base mechanics first. To start off the fight, he'll be casting Kinky Release, which is an unavoidable AoE. Shield and heal accordingly. He will also cast Ai Kasumi Giri. I don't know how to say that first word, but this is where he's going to swing his sword on the whole arena save for a cone-shaped section where you will need to stand. To figure out where the safe spot will be, you will need to pay attention to the purple icon above him while he casts. It took me a bit to understand, but the safe zone is depicted by the empty space on the icon. Match it up with the same arrow and line shape around Moko's feet, and you'll be able to run to safety. He can also do double Kasumigiri, which is the same thing except he will swing twice. The icons will both display before he swings, so make sure you pay attention to both and figure out where you'll need to go for each time. If you don't think quickly like me, your best bet is to stand right underneath Moko and wait until he flashes the AoE and hope you make it to safety in time. Next, Moko will cast Soldiers of Death. The first version of this will have archers on the north and east sides of the arena. These will have arrows falling onto the ground which will create AoE circles. Make sure to find a safe spot to stand. Alternatively, Soldiers of Death can spawn a line of spearmen on the north side of the arena. They will start running at different speeds to the other side, so dodge accordingly. Moko will also cast Azure Ausweis, which is a circle AoE with a safe spot around Moko. Immediately after, there will be 3 large line attacks you'll need to avoid as well. These will leave behind marks on the floor. These marks will start pulsing one by one, indicating the order in which they will start to erupt in. This one is pretty easy to avoid. He can also do Scarlet Ausweis, which will start the exact same way. The AoEs for this are a lot wider once the lines start pulsing, so make sure you pop Sprint and a shield if you need to. If you choose to close the katana case lid, Moko will cast Untempered Sword. This will spawn katanas on each side of the map once at a time, which will slice across to the other side in line attacks. Find yourself a safe spot for each side. If you leave the case alone, Moko will cast Moonless Night. This summons 2 large hands on opposite sides of each other on the arena. Stand on either side without the hands in the middle to be in the safe zone. After the first half circle swipes, the hands will rotate to the other sides and swipe again. If you extinguish the lamps, Moko will cast Tengu Yobi. This will summon flying Tengus on 2 sides of the arena with alternating arrows. These will push you in the direction they point after a bit, so make sure you stand accordingly. Moko will cast this again, but this time along with Ghastly Grasp, which will create red circle AoEs across the arena. These will not go off until after you get pushed, so make sure you're not going to get knocked into one once you do. If you leave the lanterns lit, Moko will cast Spirit Spark. This will create tons of circle AoEs you'll need to avoid. After the first strike, these demon heads will spawn and you'll need to avoid both the heads and more AoEs at the same time. Goari is the second boss in the middle portal and in my opinion, the easiest boss in the whole dungeon. He starts off with Unenlightenment, which is an unavoidable AoE. He will then cast Flickering Flame, which summons these blue flames on the outside of the arena. These do line attacks across the ground. Before the attack, Goari will cast Plectrum of Power, indicating how to avoid getting hit. These red symbols will widen these line attacks, so stand in between them to avoid damage. Alternatively, when he has blue symbols during Morphic Melody, the lines will split apart, making the safe zones on the initial lines. Goari will do the same combo but with Sulfuric Stone. Instead of the blue flames, he will summon stones within the arena floor. Again, with Plectrum of Power, the circle AoEs will grow wider, and with Morphic Melody, the safe spot will be underneath the rocks. After you experience all of that, Goari will combine the flames and stones as he casts Flame and Sulfur. Find your safe zones depending on if the symbols are blue or red and dodge accordingly. Rousing Reincarnation will form a tether to you, giving you 3 debuffs upon cast finish. The only way to get rid of these debuffs is to stand in the circles that will begin to appear. The first one will appear by itself, freeing you from a debuff as you dodge Goari's attacks. Quickly make your way to the second circle. This one drops a lot faster, so if you don't make it, you'll be turned into a cute little chipmunk. Make sure to make it inside all 3 circles by the time the ball reaches the ground to remove all 3 debuffs, all while avoiding the little cone and circle AoEs that Goari is sending out. Torching Torment is an AoE tank buster. If you're in a party, move away from each other and shield and heal as necessary. Strain Snap will begin with a circle AoE followed by more circular AoEs with safe zones inside them. Stand accordingly. If you chose to spare the baboon earlier in the dungeon, he will come back and you will become tethered to him. Once Goari finishes casting Pure Shock, you will be stunned and pulled inside the octagon to begin fighting the baboon. Goari will continue to throw cone and circle AoE attacks out while the baboon begins self-destruct. Once the baboon is taken care of, the octagon will drop and the fight will resume normally. If you defeat the baboon before reaching Goari, he will cast Thunder Call, summoning 2 lightning balls at first on either sides of the arena. This will do large circle AoEs around the lightning balls, so stand in the safe zones on the opposite sides. Then he will cast Humble Hammer, which will create these sparkly AoEs all over. After a second, these will begin dropping hammers into the circles. Goari will then combine these 2 skills. Avoid the hammers and look out for the lightning ball that shrinks. There will be a safe zone on the far side of it. I didn't notice when I did my run, so I just took the AoE damage like a champ. If you defeat the Chochin monsters without lighting the lanterns, Goari will start off with Fighting Spirits, an unavoidable AoE. Right after, he will cast Worldly Pursuit, a cross-shaped attack that will rotate in the direction of the arrows around Goari. The lines are wide, but it doesn't move too much, so you should be able to keep up with the safe zone just fine. He will then cast Vivo Breaker immediately after, slamming the ground 5 times to do AoE damage, so heal and shield accordingly. If you do light the lanterns properly, with the Chojin monsters, you will unlock the secret pathway leading to Enenra. This is the only way you can fight him, and is the only time you need to fight him, so let's go over his skills. First is Flagrant Combustion, which is unavoidable AoE damage, so pop your shield if you need to. Next, he will teleport and begin casting Out of the Smoke. This will form a line of smoke around the arena. Wherever it ends will be where Enenra jumps to, so make sure you stand there as well to avoid the arena-wide attack into the fire. Enenra will then cast Kisuru Clamor, which will create circle AoEs that go off one after the other as he jumps around. Make sure you avoid them accordingly. Smoke and Mirrors will split Enenra into 2. These little guys can use all the same skills as Big Enenra while also doing a couple of their own. Their version of Out of the Smoke is a little trickier, having to find the safe spot between 2 strikes of Into the Fire. They will also jump on opposite sides of each other and perform one of 2 skills. The first will be Clearing Smoke. This will cause a knockback when the 2 Enenra collide, giving you a bleeding debuff. Alternatively, they can also cast Smoke Rings, which will create an AoE in the middle where they collide. Try to stay on the outer edge of the arena if possible to avoid damage. After the respective skill, they will jump back and cast Smokestack, combining back into a big Enenra. Smoldering Damnation will summon these smoke circles around the arena. These expand at different rates, so try to find a safe spot without getting hit by other circles. Pipe Cleaner will form a tether to you and deal damage in a line slice. Snuff is an AoE tank buster, so shield accordingly. These mechanics will repeat until you defeat Enenra. The last boss in Mount Rokkon is Shishio, the second boss in the right portal. He's definitely the hardest in my opinion, with mechanics getting the best of me and making me spend 30 minutes on him alone and one run. So let's go over his skills so you hopefully don't struggle as much as me. First, he'll hit you with Enkyo, which is his unavoidable AoE damage. Splitting Cry is a tank buster attack that shoots out in a wide line. Shishio's main base mechanic is Storm Cloud Summons. There are multiple variations of this. First, he'll summon storm clouds in a certain formation, then cast Smoke Eater, absorbing some of the clouds. Depending on how many and which ones he absorbs will determine his next form of attack. In this variation, he's casting once on Rokujo, which is a singular wide line attack in the middle of the arena. The remaining storm clouds will detonate in a circular AoEs after this goes off. I find the safest spot to stand is in the middle with Shishio. For twice on Rokujo, there will be two line attacks crisscrossing together. Again, the remaining clouds will detonate. If he summons the clouds on the outer edge, he will cast Thunder onefold, and the remaining clouds will detonate. Right after, small lines will spawn from the clouds, shooting lightning across the arena. There's not really a strategy for this, just run around and hope you're in a safe spot for each round. Alternatively, Shishio can also cast Thunder threefold when he absorbs 3 rounds of storm clouds. This is basically the same, except the line attacks are much larger and easier to avoid. The last variation is thrice on Rokujo, which will form 3 crisscrossing line attacks with 2 storm clouds on opposite sides. Get to the safe spot to avoid damage. Shishio will jump to one side of the arena and cast Noble Pursuit, forming these rings along this linear path. Find the open space between the rings. They will shoot out an attack on both sides as Shishio charges across to the other side. Immediately following, he will cast Thunder Vortex, a large AoE with safe zones on the outside and right by Shishio. If you cleaned all 4 stones of protection, Shishio's Haunting Cry skill will summon 3 different types of animals. The baboons will do circle AoE damage surrounding themselves. The tigers will do lane attacks, and the snakes will shoot circle AoE poison at you. Avoid all 3 accordingly. If you leave the stones alone, Shishio will create this large sand area that encompasses the majority of the map. Standing in this will give you a debuff lasting 10 seconds and will kill you once it reaches 0, if you do not remove it. To remove it, simply run to the empty part of the arena without sand. Shishio will be casting Yoki at this time, so you will need to avoid the circle AoEs from that as well. He will then jump to the empty side of the arena and cast Yoki Uzu, a large circle AoE. Once the cast is at about half, run into the sand to avoid it, and immediately run out to remove the death debuff. Make sure to utilize your sprint if you need it. If you ran across the ancient tree to get to Shishio, Haunting Cry will summon these 4 wraith-licking ghosts. These do 1 circle AoE around themselves, and then begin moving while doing pulsating circle AoE damage. Avoid these, of course. If you went across the Iwakura, Haunting Cry will instead summon these weird demon-looking things. Each one will raise 1 hand each, indicating the side they will swipe towards. Again, I don't think that fast, so I did tie the first time, but just identify the safe square and make it there in time. That is going to complete this guide for all of the second bosses in Mount Rokkon, and congratulations, you just got yourself a cool new mount. If you need help with Yozakura or figuring out all the available routes for the dungeon, check out my other videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video for some more fun.